This episode of The Extraordinary Keys for Life with Julia Anais is brought to you by Synergy for the Soul, working together to help you shift paradigms, envision a better life, empower your mind to live a better version of life through educating via workshops, retreats and events. For more information, head to our Facebook page, Synergy for the Soul.
Hi, welcome to the Extraordinary Keys for Life podcast. I'm Julia Anais, author of Extraordinarily Ordinary, Eyes Wide Open to Wonder. Our topic today, Circle of Life, is one with many edges. Although a circle is smooth and complete, it can also, in a sense, perhaps represent a whirlwind, a spiralling whirl of movement. Life moves swiftly. In fact, it often moves the human psyche at a most rapid pace, which at times can feel as though it takes our breath away. As we all know, our breath also can literally be taken away in an instant. Often we forget, none of us know when that actual moment will be. In my book, Extraordinarily Ordinary, the chapter Circle of Life became central to my story and how my interest in the spiritual aspect of life unfolded. I'm again turning to the dictionary to clearly state the definition of spiritual, noting its meaning, relating to or affecting the human spirit or soul, as opposed to material or physical things. As emotional beings, I've realised being human necessitates feeling all the highs and lows throughout life, processing the responses and learning to understand how the natural order of life's circle is designed teaches us that we are alive on planet Earth to be human. This chapter was inspired by the grief which I was moving through after losing my father, the event which was catalyst to my wondering and eventually further exploring what life really is all about. I feel my story reflects for each and every one how we are all the same but different, and that life unfolds as is needed for us each to find our way through the challenges and upheavals of our individual experience. That said, this does not mean we should face these alone. I was recently reminded of the wisdom of Ram Dass, which tells, we're all just walking each other home. My story is about change, grieving and understanding how this impacts our lives. Might I say, this wasn't realised until after the fact of writing the book. As I've said before, I learned writing as a cathartic process, and also one which is widely recognised for its benefits both scientifically and therapeutically. I've been reminded that each and every one of us can help each other. It's all about embracing our communities and allowing each other to be seen and heard as we each move through the spiral that inevitably spins us each through the passing by or passage that life is. Today, my guest David Laws and I are openly discussing the real and raw, which is the circle of life. Welcome, David. Lovely to see you again.
Yes, thanks, Julia.
Thank you for joining me again.
You're very welcome.
For my podcast.
Thank you.
We're talking about the circle of life this afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I'd just start with an extract from my book, Extraordinarily Ordinary, which this particular topic is based around. The circle of life is a complicated one, and the process of death, loss, and grieving teaches us that nature, time, and patience are truly the three best physicians. Two things are assured in this life. We are all born, and we all will die. Life in between is ours to make the most of. Mm-hmm. So, how would you like to expand on this topic?
Well, it's a really fascinating topic, and it's one that has many depths, realms, and levels to it, I guess. And it sounds a little daunting and scary, I guess, that from the very moment we are born, we're already dying, because death may occur at any time. So we're almost born to die. And when we look at nature and the seasons of nature and the cycles of nature, the cycle of life, of birth and death, is no different to the cycle of nature, because really we are in sync with nature and its cycles of natural law. It's all part of it. Nothing and no one lives forever, and everything has its season. And when we take the time to really understand what that is, and if we take the time to look in depth as to what this whole journey is all about, and study, I don't mean study, but to read books and to explore this a little. You see, there's nothing more powerful than knowledge. There's nothing that's going to empower you more than knowledge. And when you understand what really this is all about, and not from what we see in the world and, death and destruction. Death is this almost like this dark cloud that forever hangs over us because, my God, don't go near that because you could fall over and die. Don't step near that platform and train could run you over. Don't stand too close to the road, that car run you over, blah, blah, blah. There's always the fear of death. It's like, don't do this and don't do that. And so many people are just so cowed by fear because they just want to tread gently through life on eggshells and not wanting to step in the wrong direction or make the wrong choice that's going to end their life. But the reality is this: we all have a destiny. None of us know when that time is that we're going to pass. But for me personally, Jules, I believe that, and it's only my personal belief, and my spiritual teachings and my spiritual studies have lent me towards believing that we have many, many physical lives. So really there is no death. And I've got to tell you something. It sounds a little deep to say this, but I'll tell you anyway. If you lose your fear of death, you lose your fear of living in fear, it's all gone. Because if you don't fear death, you fear nothing. I mean, really, what's the worst thing than death? Well, my God, actually nothing when you come to think of it. So when you look at this as a never-ending journey in the physical and the spiritual realms, your whole life just completely disappears into a world of positivity and love and acceptance and understanding and knowing that there is no death. And it's a never-ending cycle of expansion, of knowledge, of spiritual growth through love and through awareness. And I'll tell you what, if you, my dear friend, are listening, it's very interesting because if you pursue this path of finding out through your own studies, and I'm not talking about the teachings of a particular church or a particular religion or a particular philosophy. I often say to people, I take a little bit of a smidgen out of everyone. I don't really belong to any group. I don't belong to any particular religion or philosophy. But guess what? There's a little bit of more in all of them that I could take from it. Yep, I can take a bit from that. Yes, I can take a bit from you. A little bit from the Buddhists, a little bit from the Mayans, and a little bit from the Catholics, and a little bit from all of them. And they all contribute in some way, shape or form to what I personally believe in. I've arrived at a place in my life where I'm very, very peaceful and comfortable with what life is all about. And just in recent times, very sadly, my family and I lost our beautiful father only 12 weeks ago from the time of this recording. I'm on that journey of grief right now as I speak, so I can actually speak from great experience, and this is the first time that I've lost such a very close member of my own family. So the thing that has supported me and greatly assisted me through this journey is understanding that there is no death of the person, only death of the physical body. But let me tell you something, that does not preclude me from not experiencing the effects of grief. And I'd like to take you on a little bit of a journey, Jules, and the rest of you that are listening. I have been on the conscious spiritual path for probably close to 3 decades now, particularly the last 12, 13 years that I've been involved in this work in a full-time capacity as a professional psychic, as you may not know, and studying death and experiencing the ability to receive messages from loved ones that have passed over and delivering them to their beautiful physical family and friends that are still here with us is a very humbling and enlightening experience for all concerned. But having said that, just the very fact that I've recently lost Dad, my siblings and I have lost our beautiful dad, I was travelling so wonderfully well to a point just after Dad had passed, and I threw myself back into my work after he had passed. Sadly, I wasn't able to attend his funeral because at the time of this recording, we have border restrictions between Queensland and New South Wales, and I wasn't able to gain a compassionate pass to attend his funeral. So I had to watch his funeral via a Zoom connection, an experience that has affected many, many, many people in this country in different states, thousands actually. So I'm certainly not alone in that respect. But after the funeral was over, I just threw myself back into my work and was very, very busy. I have been very busy. Now, do you know, it must have been 2, probably 3 weeks ago, I just mentioned to Julia before we started recording today, my friends, that I woke up one Monday morning and I rang my personal assistant and I said, Tracy, can you please cancel my whole entire week? I said, I need to cry. I just felt an overwhelming sense of sadness and grief, and finally grief had caught up with me. And you know what? The worst thing you can do is to shy away from it, stamp it out, slam the door, close the door, block it out, throw yourself back into the work and say, take a cement pill and suck it up, princess. Something that a lot of us are told to do, and a lot of us feel guilty that we have to do it like that and have to face our grief that way. Nothing can be further from the truth, because here's the blunt reality, my friends. Even for someone like me who's very experienced in the experiences of life and death, and the fact that life and death is a part of my business because of what I do for a living, and my understanding, my philosophies and teachings have led me to the truth of what life and death is all about. It does not take away the human experience of feeling this, because part of being human is feeling the sense of loss, the sense of grief. And I always say that grief is the price we pay for the love that we've had. And for us, we had the beautiful joy of having Dad in our lives for 82 years. He was 82 years when he died. I've recently turned 60, so I turned 60 just 2 weeks before he died. So Dad was in my life for 60 years. So I look at it from the point of view that I had 60 fabulous years of life with my darling Dad, and I'm pleased to know that I don't have to wait another 60 years until I'm reunited with him again. So I look at it from that perspective, thinking I will grieve his departure now. Dad and I were incredibly close. We are a very, very close-knit family. So the sense of grief and loss is quite comprehensive for all of us. Now, having said that, for that whole week, what did I do? Well, I'll tell you, on that Monday, I cried and I cried and I cried. And I'm getting teary just thinking about it now. And it's funny because I knew that it was something that I had to endure. And the worst thing you can do is to block it. So I sat here and I let the tears flow. And I'll tell you something. On Tuesday, it was a very quiet day. I pretty much just kept to myself. And on the Wednesday, I was booked in to see a beautiful lady who helped me with a healing session. And I thought, I'll just go and get a healing. And I thought, I don't often treat myself. And honestly, guys, how many of us stop and treat ourselves? How many of us nurture us? We're always busy nurturing other people. Mums out there, busy nurturing the kids, busy nurturing their husbands, and busy nurturing other people's lives, particularly mums. And a lot of people will relate to this. But how many of us stop to nurture us and to nurture our heart, our soul, and our needs and our wants? Because at the end of the day, we are all human. And no matter how much you know or understand and comprehend this wonderful world that we're in and this wonderful work that I'm involved in, we are still human. So on that Wednesday, I went along and had a healing with a beautiful lady called Lisa. And I tell you what, I walked in and that lady in 1 hour, as quick as anything, she picked up my energy as soon as I walked in the door. She's a very perceptive lady. And she said, gee, you're sad today. Well, of course, I just broke down and cried. And she said, I knew it. She said, you walked in, you had this sadness around you, sweetheart. Hop up on the bed and I'll heal you. Well, not heal you, but she said, I'll bring some relief to you. And that's exactly what happened. I don't want to dwell on that so much, but the point that I'm trying to make is this. When you are feeling sad, or when you are grieving, or when you've got that tremendous sense of loss, don't be afraid to ask for help, or don't be afraid to go and have a healing, or don't be afraid to nurture yourself in some ways, my friend. The worst thing you can do is to shut the lid and go, no, I'm fine. It's like, put your hands on your ears and go, la, 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 I'm fine. Well, you can only do that for so long, because one day it'll come up and it will smack you on the back of the head, just like it did for me.
And that's a particularly important point to make, because our emotional needs are often what we leave till last. And I feel like our generation particularly has been taught not to cry, not to show emotion.
Especially men.
Yeah, especially men, which is unfortunately in this time of life right now with COVID and everything that's happened, a lot of people have been put into a grieving process. And we actually discussed that in episode 5 quite extensively with Deirdre from Paradise Kids about things that you can do to help yourself through those processes, because it is a natural process. And as you said, even to just sit down and cry, even that, just allow yourself to say, I'm not okay, I need some time.
That's exactly right.
Because we are all human. I lost my father nearly 14 years ago, and then that was what inspired this particular chapter in the book. And even now sometimes I'm caught off guard because they're our parents. They're part of us.
Of course.
And we, as you said, have 60 years with a person and they're close. And Yeah, often people do tend to just try and soldier on.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
And grief is it's funny, I had this chat to our beautiful mum just the other day. And of course, mum's 82 now, and her and dad were married for just shy of 61 years. So thank goodness they celebrated their 60th wedding anniversary last year, and they just fell short of celebrating their 61st anniversary this year. So mum and dad have been together since they were 17, for goodness sake. So you can imagine it's an entire lifetime. And I rang mum a few weeks ago, and I ring mum every other day, we always have a chat. And I said, "How you going, sweetheart?" She said, "Oh, I'm doing okay." She said, "The grief thing just hits me like a train sometimes." And I said, "I'll tell you what, honey, do you know what? This is how I look at grief. Grief is like an unwanted flatmate that has moved in. It's an energy that's moved into your house that you are not familiar with. You don't like the energy. You don't know what to do, what to say, how to communicate with it. You can't get rid of it because they have just walked in with their bags and plonked their bags down. And it's like, what are you doing here? I don't like you. I don't want you here. I can't deal with you. I want to get rid of you." And they go, "Well, I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying." And you are not allowed to let that person move out. So here's what you do. We can sit there, we can argue with it, we can fight with it, we can do whatever we want. But if we fight it, it will fight back and go, "Yeah, well, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here." So you know what we have to learn to do, I believe? I believe instead of trying to evict it out of our lives and get rid of it and deny it and block it, we have to learn to assimilate with it and to allow it to become a part of our lives, an unwanted part of our lives, but through the course of time, like a person who moves in, hypothetically, as a flatmate. You just imagine if somebody did move in, you think, "Oh God, I don't like the feel of her, I don't like the feel of him." But you know what, let's hypothetically say there are circumstances that prevail that don't allow it to be any other way. So guess what? Coming to grips with the fact that you cannot evict or eliminate this person out of your life, we've got to learn to live with them. So the best way we can do that, I believe, my friends, is to learn to understand the machinations of how this person works, or in this situation, how grief works. Perhaps read up on some grief. I mean, there's an enormous amount of information on there on how we can cope with grief and how we can get on top of it. Now, I'm going to sit here and tell you I'm the first one to put my hand up and say I am no expert in grief. I'm not a grief counsellor. I've had nothing to do with counselling people in grief. I can only speak from my own vast experience of life, but this is the first time I've experienced such profound grief so close hand, because it was our beautiful dad that passed away. Having said that, grief can be many, many things. Grief can be the grief of losing a job or losing a business or losing your way in life. It's not necessarily losing a person through death, but it can be death of a situation. There's no end of things that can cause us grief in life, and grief is a part of life. So I think the most powerful thing we can do is to learn to come to terms with what that grief is and learn to assimilate with it, or to go with it. I guess in a way, it's a bit of a crazy analogy, but it's not unlike being caught in a rip when you go for a swim. People get caught in a rip and suddenly all the terror strikes. "Oh my God, I've been caught in a rip." They teach us the worst thing you can do is to swim against the rip, because you'll quickly be sapped of your energy and the rip will win, it will carry you away, and you can potentially drown. So in grief, we can potentially end up drowning in grief if we keep fighting it, going against it, and allowing it to consume us. So what do they teach you when you're caught in a rip? Don't swim against the current. Learn to swim with the current. Allow it to carry you to where it needs to carry you. And along the way, pick up a few little things. Bring a few little things into your life that might bring you a little bit of joy. You might have a favourite friend that you can connect with and say, "I just need a cup of tea. Would you mind if we have a cuppa and a chin wag?" We can do that. Little things like that are just so important to do. And only yesterday, a beautiful lady contacted me, and her 18-year-old daughter very sadly passed away last year, and I helped her in the passing away service. She's a beautiful lady, and she contacted me this week because she's still completely grief-stricken over losing her beautiful daughter, and I cannot imagine a more painful experience than a parent losing a beautiful 18-year-old or an 18-year-old child, any child at all, at any age. So anyway, I've invited her over next week to have a coffee and just to have a chin wag. Now, I cannot cure her grief. I cannot cure anything, I cannot fix anything, but it's just the fact that we can get together and have a chat, have a chinwag, and allow her to express her sadness and her feelings, and hopefully she will walk away and feel a little more enlightened or a little lighter, a little happier for our experience together. And that's all there is to it. And we can, as long as we are there for each other, I think it's a very, very important thing. So on that whole analogy of fighting grief, as we talk about it, fighting, I don't actually like the word fighting because it conjures up restrictions and forcefulness and resistance. That's the word I'm looking for. It conjures up resisting. That's what fighting is. When we fight, we put up a resistance to something. So, and what we resist persists. So if we fight grief and fight it, well, it will end up consuming us and no one wins. So we have to learn to understand the machinations of it, and the fact that sometimes I'm still on the grieving journey now, and I feel great at the moment, but who knows, I could wake up tomorrow and bam, it could hit me on the back of the head again, and guess what? I'll let it come in. I'll let the tears flow, and I'll let the sadness flow, and all the memories, I'll let all that flow, because I know it's an essential part of my healing. And my dear friends, grief is an essential part of your healing as well. It is a part of the healing process. So if anyone tells you, buckle up, princess, and, straighten up, sunshine, you've got to get your act together and get on with life, you know what? Tell them to take their story walking, because it is not up to anyone to tell you what to do or how to feel or how you should react to a certain grieving process, because everyone is different. But please understand, I'm no expert. I'm not professing to be an expert in any way, shape or form. But what I profess to you is just my own experience, my own take on things, and everyone is a little different. Now, also too, I might add, just as an adjunct, my sister won't mind me saying this, but my darling sister has suffered terribly with grief, way more than what I have and what my brothers have. But she's on her path and journey, and we can help her and assist her on her path. So it's an example of how in one family, how we can all react differently. I guess the thing that's helped me enormously is the fact that I've got a very strong spiritual component and base to my life, and spirituality is what I'm attuned to for a living. And so it is, I guess, inverted commas, a little easier for me. Doesn't mean that I escape the effects of it. Of course I don't, because I've been through it, as you know. But Linny has been on quite a bit of a heartbreaking journey, because her and Dad were very, very close. But the best we can do is to be there for her, to love her, support her and help her. But she knows at the end of the day it is her journey, and she'll come out of it and learn in her own way.
It's certainly a difficult part of the journey to face the finality. That's what I found with when my father passed, and I walked for quite some time in the fog of that.
Of course.
And they do say that there is no time limit on grief.
No, there's not.
Everybody is different, as you said, and many can grieve a lifetime.
Oh, look, I know people who can just be in a flood of tears because they lost a loved one 20, 30 years ago, and all of a sudden, boom, they can just be in a flood of tears. They're like, oh my God, I miss them, and they've been gone for 20 or 30 years or even longer, and time has no... They say time heals all. I don't believe time heals all. I look at it this way. I don't believe that our grief or our loss is ever healed in a sense, and I'll tell you why. I said to Mum the same thing. I said, you know what, darling? I said, a major part of your heart is empty now. Dad has gone. And you know what? No one of us and no one else can ever fill that void, that space. That's now sacred ground for Dad. But your heart is, a major part of your heart has departed now and has gone to live with Dad. And we understand that. And I said, but the beautiful thing is, sweetheart, you're 82 years old now, and you're not going to have to wait another 82 years or 60 years to see Dad. You know what I mean? So you've had the major part of your lives together in a loving relationship, never had a day's sickness up until when Dad died. So they've had a very rich life. So and I know that's no consolation for the here and now, but she's not going to have to wait many, 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 many years. I hope a few more years, but she's not going to have to wait 60 years to see Dad again. No. And thankfully, Mum and Dad have a very strong spiritual component to their lives, and Dad was enormously connected to and loved the work that I do. So that's why he's been so active, and we've had a number of connections with Dad since he has passed. So there's no doubt in any of our family's minds that he is alive and well, but in spiritual form instead of the physical form. As I said, it doesn't preclude us from the fact that we are human and we are suffering and feeling his loss terribly.
Sometimes I refer to it as a circle of love. As the movie Ghost actually says, you take the love with you.
Oh, of course.
And while your father's no longer here in physical sense, we do still feel that around us. I still feel my father around me often. And And that is something that can actually help us allow our hearts to open. If we allow grief to open our hearts, then we can feel that presence still with us.
Absolutely. And I think something that can help sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes a thought that can help is this. Just imagine if there was somebody that you are grieving terribly because they have passed away, and you've been spending a lot of time grieving their loss and you can't seem to get over it. Perhaps if you imagine you were sitting on a park bench and they were sitting beside you, I would ask you, what would they say to you? What advice would they give you if you were sitting there grieving? Would they say, thank you for sitting here and crying every day? Or would they more be inclined to say, I'm fine, I'm here with you, I understand you've shed tears for us, but there's no necessity to immerse yourself for so long in the sadness and the grief because we are here with you. Now, I know that's not the same as physically putting our arms around somebody, giving them a hug and being able to tell them how much they love you. Of course, we can't do that. But just imagine what advice they would give. If they were alive, what would they say? What would that person say? Are they the sort of person who'd say, come on, you know what? Let's move together on this. I'm going to help you with your grief. And I don't expect you to get over or fully heal from the grief of losing me, because that actually makes my heart sing, because I know how much you loved me. And if there was no grief, there'd really be no love. If you don't grieve anyone, well, perhaps there's not the love or the level of love that was there. But when there's a lot of grief, of course, it's an expression of the amount of love that we had for that person that passed away.
Yes, that's very true. As you said earlier, sitting with people in their grief is very important. If someone is struggling, it never hurts to just lend them an ear, have a cuppa.
That's exactly right, Jules, because, I mean, as we know, some of the worst times for people to feel grief is actually not at the moment of death, but it's after everything gets back to normal, and everyone that scurries around and helps, and all, we have family and friends that come around to help us and support us for the funeral and for the passing over, and then we might have a family member or friends come and stay for a little while until things settle down and get back to normal, in inverted commas, and then when everyone leaves, what's left behind and who's left behind. And that's one thing that Mum said. She said, my God, now that everyone's gone back home and all the relatives have gone back, I mean, when everyone goes back into normal life, what's left then? So for a lot of people, particularly like my darling mum, she said the hardest thing she had to cope with was just setting a dinner plate for one at night.
What's my life now?
What's my life
it's
now?
New...
She said, I keep waiting for Dad to walk down the hallway, and you know, maybe he's in the shower, maybe he's out the back gardening, but he just doesn't come. And she said, I see this empty chair beside me where he always sat as we had dinner. And she said, I just can't comprehend that. And I said, Mum, of course you can't. But she said, I just have to learn to live with that now. And it's something that will, to a point, become normal for her in the future. But for now, it's that in itself is a great loss, and not being able to chat to someone.
Yeah. For
someone like Mum and Dad who lived on their own, all us kids are well and truly grown up and off their hands now. And for someone like Mum, it's like, gee whiz, my partner's gone. Who have I got to talk to? Even though there's lots of us to talk to on the phone, she can ring any one of us and ring. She's got lots of friends, thankfully, but there's no one physically there just to sit there and share the journey with her anymore.
That's it. Yeah, it's certainly a big topic, and one none of us escape.
No.
And that is...
No, we're not getting out of here alive.
That is exactly right. And so that circle is... It's an endless circle, really.
Well, it is. It's a circle that has no end. It virtually is the ultimate expression of the infinity symbol.
Yes.
It's infinite. There's no end. It just goes around and around and around and around. And that's all it is until, I mean, obviously we finish all our physical lessons, of which there can be, tens of thousands. And that's another subject for another time. But basically, when we come to grips with the fact that life is this never-ending circle, the best thing you can do, my friends, is simply this. For a lot of people that don't spend the time or investigate the deeper philosophical side of life, you'll find commonly that they are the people who will be most profoundly affected by a sense of loss, because people who don't really understand the difference between life and death, and I just think that death is final, they don't believe, or they don't have a belief in anything, and they just think we die and we move into nothingness. Those people can be tremendously impacted by a death because they don't believe in the afterlife, they don't believe in anything, and that's their path and journey. And I'm not here to try and dictate to them and tell them what's right or wrong, but all I'm saying is equip yourself with knowledge, equip yourself with good tools of truth that you will discover through your own teachings, There's a beautiful book, it's called The Life of the Yogi, and it's Paramahansa Yogananda, P-A-R-A-M-A-N-S-A, Paramahansa Yogananda, Y-O-G-A-N-D-A. You can go on to Google, you can look up Paramahansa Yogananda and The Life of a Yogi, and it's a beautiful, beautiful spiritual book. And another one is Khalil Gibran. I'm a huge fan of Khalil Gibran, and it's K-A-H-I-L, and his surname is G-I-B-R-A-N. He's a Lebanese philosopher who died many years ago, but his spiritual teachings are phenomenal. So for people who are suffering grief, the spiritual teachings of both of those wonderful spiritual, I don't like to use the word gurus, they pretty much are, but they're very, very humble people. They are great spiritual teachers. In fact, I'd rather use the word teacher than guru, but they are wonderful teachers and they teach such truth. And when you are immersed in those sorts of truths, my dear friend, it will put your mind at ease about life and death. It'll put your mind at ease about death and the death of a loved one. As I said, it doesn't preclude you from feeling the sense of loss when death occurs. That's exactly what I'm going through now, but it lessens the impact of it enormously.
As you were saying before, if you could sit alongside your loved one and ask them, then they would rather see you continuing to live.
Yeah.
And that is actually one of the keys, I don't want to say coping, to
learning to live without them.
Yeah, learning to live without them is to not get stuck in the grieving, celebrate more their life and what they...
Celebrate their life and not their death.
I
don't mean celebrate their death, but celebrate their life and not grieve their death. And celebrate the fact that they were here for however long they were here for.
And everything you had
Everything they shared, the richness of our life because of them being here.
Because we are all meant to impact each other.
Of course.
And as you said, the richness, we each take something from every person in our life.
Correct.
That's a really important point that can help with the grieving process.
Yeah, exactly.
As well.
Yep.
Yeah. And I also heard that when we're in deep grief, we also often, spirit can't reach us.
Correct.
To help soothe us.
Yep, exactly right.
Which is also, I know a lot of people look for signs and look for some reassurance after losing someone. And so if you can allow yourself to ease out of the grief a little bit, then they can connect with you.
Correct.
And help you as well.
A lot of people don't realise, Jules, that when we lose a loved one, the first thing they want to do is to reassure us that they are fine, they still exist, and they want to in some way come back to us and let us know. Now, some people really get it. When I say get it, when you move into spirit, it's quite a process to go from physical into spirit and trying to come back into the physical, because we are very dense. We resonate at a much denser level than what spirit does, for obvious, because we're in the physical plane and everything is energy. If you look at everything on the physical plane, it's just a massive energy resonating at a very, very dense level. A huge heavy boulder, just a clump of energy resonating at a very, very deep level. The human body is the same, but it's not as dense as a rock, but nonetheless it's the same. Then you might have a piece of fruit. Well, that's much less dense than what a physical body is, but nonetheless it's energy. And then we have energy itself, which is our being. And I think a lot of people don't realise that the human spirit, our soul, it weighs 4 ounces. Did you know that?
No.
Yeah, our spirit weighs 4 ounces. So when our soul leaves our body becomes 4 ounces lighter, because our spirit actually has weight, believe it or not.
Wow.
Yep, it does. So that's an example of energy. Now, once we move out of our physical body and into the spiritual plane, the first thing we want to do is pop back and let everyone know we're okay. And it's not always possible. And especially, sadly, when a death is a tragedy. So when people die accidentally through an accident, or they die of a heart attack, or when there's a sudden passing, an unexpected passing, particularly when there are younger people involved, children, what have you, it's a terrible tragedy for people to lose. And of course we all understand that, because that's the human side of it. But the reality is that when the grief is so deep and strong, like this lady that's coming to see me next week for a coffee, who lost her 18-year-old daughter, she cannot get over her grief, and I understand that. I'm a parent as well, and God forbid, even though I've got my spiritual beliefs and philosophies, I cannot imagine a greater challenge than a parent losing a child that you're so close to. And that's something that I have explained to her, and she understands that, but she said, gosh, I've got to try and move out of my grief, because obviously she's desperate for a connection with her daughter to make sure that she's okay. But she does understand that also too, she may not be able to reach it because the daughter's like, Mum, I'm here, but I can't get through the heavy energy. It's like a black cloud, and they're trying to reach us, we're trying to reach them. And that's why you'll often find that, as in the passing of my father, Dad only died 12 weeks ago, just a little over 12 weeks ago, and even though his passing was fairly sudden and sad and unexpected, there's not the level of grief there would be unless somebody was a young child, because we all know that Dad was 82 and had a very rich, rewarding life, and very sad and tragic that he's not tragic. Well, it's tragic, but it's not a tragedy, if you understand what I mean.
I know what you mean.
It's just a sad loss. But at the end of the day, it's like, good on you, mate. You had a damn good life with him and Mum. So it's a difference. But what I'm saying is, there's not that dark cloud there with Dad, and that's why he's been back.
That's why you can connect.
That's why I can connect, even though we're grieving him. But it's not like, oh, please come back. He's in a much happier place.
Yeah, and you let him go in a way that
correct.
He could move with ease.
Yes, exactly.
Into that other side. And your family also had a chance to begin, I guess, the grief process.
Of course, that's right.
And move with him rather
Correct.
than
that's exactly right. And luckily, Mum's had a couple of connections with him as well. And Mum's 82 and she's never had a spiritual connection, but she's been convinced that he's been back probably 3 times now. So, even though she grieves him terribly, but she said, my God, it's just amazing. She's quite taken aback with the fact that he's been to see her as well. So it's wonderful.
It's the physical presence that we grieve.
Of course.
There was a beautiful story that was shared with me at a Celebration for Life event a couple of years after my dad passed. And I've written about it in my book, actually. And it was a story called Water Bugs and Dragonflies. And it told the story of how tadpoles become dragonflies and how all those tadpoles in the water, once they move out of the water and become a dragonfly, they can't go back through that water to let their friends, as you're saying, there's that dense energy.
That's right.
They can't move back into that.
It's the transition.
Yeah, they can't move back in to say, I'm okay.
Yeah, that's right.
So it was a beautiful story, and it really helped put things in perspective for me
that's right.
at that point. And then after that, I certainly opened up and felt lighter and more able to, I guess, reconcile the grief.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's a good story to also relate to.
Yeah, that's right.
And think of. I would just like to say thank you so much for sharing personally with us.
You're very welcome, Jules. It's been my pleasure.
All of your wisdom.
Thank you.
And I hope my listeners can gain some
I hope so too.
great insight that can help them in their own lives, particularly in this terrible time of events that we're moving through.
Thanks, Jules. Look, it's my pleasure, and I hope that there's a little gold nugget in there somewhere that you can take and think, oh, yes, that's something that resonates with me. And the most important thing is, guys, just be kind to yourself. Just be kind to yourself, love yourself, nurture yourself. If you feel like a good howl, my God, maybe jump in the car and go for a drive down to the beach and private little area, have a nice good howl, or in the bush, or in the privacy of your home. But every now and again, if you need to release, don't hesitate to release. Feel the grief that is around you. Try not to keep yourself immersed in it over a long period of time. And if you feel that you're hanging on a little bit longer than what you should, or you think, oh my God, it's starting to impact on my life, that would be time to hopefully you to consider getting some professional guidance and help, because there are some wonderful grief counsellors out there. Beyond Blue, you've got Lifeline, you've got all of those wonderful organisations that are there to assist people if you are battling and struggling, because you are not meant to battle and struggle on your own. Even if you are on your own and you don't have someone to reach out to, there are organisations out there that are there to assist you and support you. I did my Lifeline training years ago, so I was a trained Lifeline counsellor myself, but it dates back a long time, and I worked with one of the co-founders of Lifeline, Margaret Appleby, who was a beautiful lady in Sydney. That was a very rewarding experience. So there's plenty of people out there to nurture you and to help you and support you. So it's a journey that you don't have to face alone, and wish you all the very, very best on your journey forward. God bless you, my friends. Thank you.
Yes, certainly. Be kind to yourself is certainly very important words. Thank you, David.
You're welcome.
And I will see you again.
I look forward to that. Bye-bye.
All the best. Bye. Thank you for listening in today. Many thanks to my guest, David Laws, also known as the famous Flower Man. You can learn more about David's work via his Facebook page, David Laws, the famous Flower Man and psychic mentor speaker. Music provided by my wonderful son Bradley Button, who you can follow on Instagram at Bradley W. Button. This series is almost ready to wrap. I'd love for you to join us for the final episode. And if you think someone else you know could benefit, please share this podcast with them. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Julia Renace and at Synergy for the Soul. Subscribe to YouTube to follow further episodes in this podcast, also available on all your favourite platforms like Whooshka, Spotify and Apple. Website is currently in the works, and you can get my book online at amazon.com or barnesandnoble.com. Remember, never underestimate the vibe of life, and you are the pen to your own book. Don't forget to give us a review, and I look forward to joining you again soon in final episode number 10. Bye now.